3 of the new Formula One season were in the Kingdom of Bahrain. After Australia and Kuala Lumpur, we'll discover who really has the early season advantage. Is Lewis Hamilton the strongest, a dominant winner of round 1 in Australia? Or is it world champion Kimi Raikkonen, the unchallenged master of Malaysia? Ferrari or McLaren? The Bahrain Grand Prix, the desert sands of Sakhir, hold the answer. So welcome to this desert circuit, which is trying this weekend, perhaps unsuccessfully, to be a little oasis of competition amid all the lurid headlines that have surrounded this sport over the course of the last few days. But qualifying for this Bahrain Grand Prix is a very important part of the early season battle between McLaren and Ferrari. And it's a battle that's being led at the moment by Lewis Hamilton, that 3-point championship lead by virtue of his victory in Australia and his 5th place in Malaysia. But Raikkonen and Ferrari were right back to form in Malaysia, and Heidfeld and Kubica have made it a solid start to the season for BMW as well. It's already a very tight battle indeed. Now, Mark Blundell, does this Bahrain circuit give an advantage to Ferrari or McLaren, or is it level pegging?
Well, I think there's an advantage for Ferrari because they've already been to the circuit and done some winter testing, and they should turn up here with some valuable data. Saying that, conditions have changed, temperatures risen. McLaren have turned up. They're not quite as strong over the last day or so. That may well change in qualifying, but I think Ferrari do have the upper hand, Steve.
Ferrari looked strong in practice yesterday, so too did Williams. Lewis Hamilton hit problems that big off. The team are rather playing down the significance of it all, but it does rather upset the weekend, doesn't it?
Yeah, it puts Lewis in his back foot slightly, but at the end of the day, racing drivers have to push, they have to find the limitations of the package they're driving. Lewis did that. He caught the curb, unsettled the car, ended up in the barrier. Quite a significant crash. The guys have put that back together, and I think Lewis will come back fighting, he always does.
One win apiece. How even do you see this battle between Lewis and Raikkonen at the start of the season?
I think it's a good battle, and I think it's going to go on for a lot longer, but the important factor will be who else is going to come into play, whether it's going to be a Massa or a Kovalainen, or even somebody like a little Nico Rosberg with a very competitive Williams.
Well, that will command our attention through most of the weekend, but rightly or wrongly, the main topic of conversation in the paddock over the last few days has been the embarrassment surrounding Max Mosley, and indeed the future position of the president of the FIA after those revelations in the News of the World last Sunday. Here's Ted Kravitz.
Well, yes, Steve, we all know the details of the Max Mosley story. No need to go into it further here. We also know that Max has called an extraordinary general meeting of the FIA where he will seek support from the individual countries which make up the FIA's membership. And down here with Sir Jackie Stewart. Now, Jackie, we all know your previous, if you can put it that way, with Max, but we can be objective about this. Is it not a private matter between him, his lawsuit with the newspaper in question?
I fear not. It's no longer a private matter. The matter is in full public domain now, and had it not gone into the public domain, I dare say Max Mosley could have continued for a good many years as president of the FIA. But I think it's now untenable for that to happen, because he's president of a global federation that services different cultures, different religions, different morals in different parts of the world. Formula One goes to a great many of those different continents. I think I would only quote the fact that Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Honda and Toyota have been quite outspoken on the matter that it may not be possible for him to continue as president. And if you look at what happened here in Bahrain, the Crown Prince could not have had Max Mosley come here because of the religious beliefs of his population, and His Majesty attending it as well as the Crown Prince being here. That would have been a great embarrassment to the country because of the revelations that came out. So it's not just a question of myself, but I think if he had been in charge of the CBI, or if he had been in an Olympic commission, or if he had been working for any multinational corporation, public company, I fear he would have already had to resign, because the moral issue is part of that.
Okay, so Jackie, thank you very much. And Steve, well, I suppose we'll see where this goes. As I say, it goes to the FIA meeting in Paris. That will be held as soon as practical, most likely next week, and we'll see what Mr. Mosley will say to them at that point.
Thanks, Ted. Well, you'd expect Sir Jackie Stewart to be pretty forthright on the subject, but his views are fairly typical of what we've been hearing around the paddock. Any developments on the Max Mosley story we'll bring to you during the course of the weekend, but let's now turn our attention to racing issues, and in particular the form of BMW, not quite up there with McLaren and Ferrari at the moment, but the evidence of the first few races shows that they're getting pretty close. And as Louise Goodman reports, the prospect of BMW challenging for victory is a very exciting one for the season to come.
In the 2 years since BMW took over Peter Sauber's team, the small Swiss-based squad has come a long way. Last year's car was clearly best of the rest behind the Ferraris and McLarens. This season they gambled on a radical evolution of that trusty workhorse to close the gap, and it looks like the gamble is paying off. Despite pre-season concerns, the car was off the pace when it first hit the track.
The first rollout was really very, very difficult. The car was very difficult to drive, it was slow, and also I did believe in the team achieving the maximum out of the car in a relatively short period of time. On the other side, I knew that in Formula One there's a saying that you go out with your car on the rollout first time and you know what you have, you know how quick you are, and luckily this year that was not the case.
As well as the new car, Robert Kubica's had to get to grips with a new race engineer, Antonio Cucurella. The partnership bore fruit straight away, with Front Row in Australia a sign of things to come.
I'm working with my new engineer, so I think we are going in a really good direction, and that's very, very good, and I'm very satisfied about it, and I hope it will go like this, progressing through all the season.
Currently second in the Constructors' Championship, 8 points ahead of Ferrari. Is that a position team boss Mario Tyson believes BMW Sauber will be able to maintain?
We certainly have closed the gap to a certain extent. As said before, last year we were half a second off. Today we are half a second off if one of the two top teams has a strong day. If they don't have a strong day, we are there already.
And Tyson believes the team has the perfect drivers to seize those opportunities, with Heidfeld's systematic approach providing the perfect foil for Kubica's raw pace.
Certainly very different characters, different driving style as well. Fortunately, both live up to about the same performance. Lap times are quite close usually. Nick certainly benefits from his experience. Robert is a different guy. He is very, very fast. He can take a car which is not perfectly set up and really push it around the track. So I think he's sort of a jewel that will get more refinement.
And just how polished can this team become?
We have set two targets for this year. First target was to turn the battle of two into a battle of three, which apparently we could achieve in the first two races at least. And the second target is to win our first race this year.
And either of these two drivers, Mark Kubica or Heidfeld, would love to get that first victory for BMW. Which is more likely to, do you feel?
That's a good question. I think, you've got the raw talent and the enthusiasm and speed of Kubica. He's new to the job and doing a fantastic job at that. You've got Heidfeld with experience. He's been around a while now and I think could cope with the pressure quite easily. At this moment, I'd probably say Heidfeld would be the guy for me to pull a win off if the result was actually there and the pressure started building. But saying that, Kubica is a great talent and a star of the future. Yeah, we had Fernando Alonso in the last couple of days saying that Kubica is possibly the most exciting talent down this pit lane. Who would you compare him to most of all? That's a difficult question. I really have to say I can't compare him to anybody. He's got the most unusual driving style. He sits in the cockpit, hangs his head out the opposite way to going around the corner, which I've never seen anyone do and achieve what he does. Maybe it came from his karting days and he's followed all the way through with it. But he's a great talent, he's got exceptional speed, and it does seem that if a car's not quite right, he can get round it. Well, let's turn to another team with high hopes for the new season, although question marks over the safety and strength of their cars in the first two races made it all a difficult start to the season for Red Bull Racing, but hopefully they put things right for round 3 here in Bahrain.
This was the moment the FIA allowed Red Bull Racing to compete in the Malaysian Grand Prix.
They had to prove their front suspension was not of a dangerous construction following a couple of alarming crashes. The RB4 had failed repeated crash tests over the winter, passing its final one just in time for first practice on Friday morning in Melbourne. And even though both cars finished the race in Malaysia and Webber scored 2 points, Red Bull come to Bahrain with strengthened push rods, a decision the drivers are happy with.
Of course, yeah, gives us a bit more security, even though, to be honest, in the race in Malaysia, I did not think about it once, because you got your helmet on, the race face on, do the best with what you've got. Well, I think there's going to be a little bit of weight there, but I think it'll cost us nothing, because the guys might sleep a bit easier and they can find a bit more performance on other things.
Sometimes you make a mistake as a driver and you crash the car, and other times the car occasionally fails and you crash the car. That's part and parcel of living on the edge like we do, so that's part of the thrill, that's part of the excitement.
It's been an embarrassing and frustrating episode for Red Bull, especially since Jeff Willis was brought in specifically to stop mistakes like this happening in the factory.
Jeff's a very process-driven and oriented, person, and it's one of the things over the last 6 months that we've been, pushing very hard on internally as the team has grown, to make sure the processes are there to capture, all elements of design, reliability, R&D, and the team is definitely making, steps forward in that area.
The fact Mark Webber managed to stay ahead of Lewis Hamilton's McLaren for 2 stints in Malaysia suggests both that the Red Bull has great traction and high-speed grip, and highlights how difficult it is to overtake in F1 these days. But still, this is Adrian Newey's 3rd year at Red Bull, so shouldn't they be winning by now?
You would hope that there's a bit more to come around the corner, and you would hope that, but also trying to walk a mile in his shoes and the guy's shoes he's got underneath him, is that it's so competitive and so hard. You look at Williams and Toyota and Honda, and just how it must be such a difficult part of the car to get right. The aerodynamics is king for lap time. It is absolutely everything to try and get that right, and obviously there's other factors which are important, but this is very, very important, and I hope that Adrian can pop a pearler out shortly.
Do you think patience is starting to wear a wee bit thin at Red Bull? Should they be challenging more strongly than they are?
I think they definitely should be challenging more. I think Adrian Newey, a great name, he's got a lot of credentials behind him in his achievements over the years, especially at McLaren. And you feel now that should be showing through, and they should be winning Grand Prix. They're getting very close, and definitely even this weekend it's showing great progress and speed.
So the absolute ambition for them, certainly in qualifying, would be to make it through to the top 10, as it is for Jenson Button, Rubens Barrichello at Honda.
Definitely, Steve. They have to get in that top 10. That's the crucial point. I think Honda have got a great chance, maybe with both drivers, Barrichello, Button, as you say. There's a lot of enthusiasm down there, and I think Honda are steadily but surely making good steps forward.
Well, of course, one other target for Rubens Barrichello is breaking that record number of Grand Prix appearances currently held by the great Riccardo Patrese. And I think Riccardo is here this weekend, and I think he's talking to Luis, the most experienced man in Formula One, Riccardo Patrese.
Yeah, and that record stands at 256 Grand Prix, a record that Rubens Barrichello is going to break when we get to Turkey. How do you feel about that, Riccardo?
Well, I feel that, of course, I'm a little bit unhappy that somebody can beat my record, but, records, they are there to be beaten, and so I have to congratulate Rubens that is coming to overlap me, but, I think this record is something important for drivers as myself and Rubens, because it means that in so many years of Formula One, the work you did he was appreciated very much from the people that work with you, and it means that everything you put down was in a good quality. Otherwise, you cannot survive for so many years in Formula One.
Now, so many of your Grand Prix were with Williams. They're looking quite racy here, particularly this morning. Nico Rosberg was fastest in the session. It must be pleasing for you to see them really back up there in fighting form.
Really, I'm pleased to see Williams at the top because they were a little bit down, especially last year, but already a podium at the beginning of this year. So to see my old team back in action at the top is a pleasure for me.
15 years since you last came to a Grand Prix weekend. Things must have changed a bit.
Yes, it changed a lot, but I'm very happy to see many old friends that they are still here. And because of that, I still feel at home.
We're very happy to see you two. Don't stay away so long.
Thank you very much. Bye.
It's an astonishing record Riccardo Patrese, and the fact that it's about to be broken by Rubens Barrichello. What do you recall of your battles with Riccardo down the years?
Actually, with Riccardo Patrese, when I first started in Formula 1, actually driving an F1 car, testing for Williams, he was the main driver along with Thierry Boutsen, and I have to say I've got a great deal of respect for Riccardo. Fantastic gentleman as well as a great driver, and I think quite underrated in many ways, but it's a great shame that his title of as many Grand Prix 256 are going to get broken soon.
Well, he'd have noticed here this weekend that the sport of Formula 1 has moved on to new locations and to new horizons, and out here in the desert, this is the 5th Bahrain Grand Prix to be held here at this Sakhir circuit, which is about 15 kilometers from the Bahrain capital of Manama. It's a tough circuit on brakes, but the drivers like it, and so too does Martin Brundle.
The Bahrain International Circuit out here in the desert. It's not a criticism, it's an extra challenge for the drivers in that it's sandy offline. It'll be even harder then to keep the cars on track without traction control. On board with Kimi Raikkonen in the Ferrari. The pit straight 14 seconds of full throttle before heavy braking down into turn 1, just 60 miles an hour. Sweeping left through 2 and 3. Multiple gear shifts as he climbs the hill towards turn 4. Turns 1, 2 and 3 here tend to keep the cars tightly packed together as they approach 4 at 180 miles an hour. We've seen plenty of incidents on the first lap and overtaking opportunities too. It's an interesting corner in that it's just 90 miles an hour through the apex. It falls away slightly through the mid-part, but the exit is very wide, so you can carry more speed through here, knowing you've got room to exit and build speed once again. End of the lap, turns 14 and 15. You drive them as one corner. It's a typical new circuit style layout with a football field full of tarmac to run off into. There's not too much point in running wide though. We have this sort of doormat effect, the desert equivalent of an AstroTurf. So if you're out here, you're going to lose time. The end then of a very exciting lap.
Well, we may be in the desert, but thankfully we haven't got the fierce heat of the opening rounds at Melbourne and Malaysia. Felipe Massa took victory here in Bahrain last year, and the Ferrari driver desperately needs another strong weekend to lift his struggling reputation. And we'll talk to Massa as we continue our build-up to qualifying in a few minutes' time. The Sakhir circuit for the Bahrain Grand Prix qualifying is coming up. Last year, Felipe Massa won from pole position, a much-needed win after 2 disappointing races to start the season. Well, in 2008, after problems and failure in Australia and Malaysia, he finds himself in exactly the same predicament, with strong rumours that Fernando Alonso is being lined up to replace him at Ferrari. So this is a big weekend for the Brazilian.
It must be tough being a Felipe Massa fan. He thrills and excites with blinding speed and bravery, then goes and lets you down.
Massa's off the racetrack.
He dropped it by himself.
A huge incident there into turn 1 as the Ferrari driver tried to go past the Red Bull driver. 2 races and 0 points.
Felipe's had to hold his hands up to these unforced errors. He can't even blame the Ferrari's handling.
I said that? I said that. I wasn't pole. I wasn't, for sure I didn't say that.
So the car was handling okay?
The car, yes. As I said, I hit one curb quite strongly, and it changed completely the aero balance from my car, and the next corner I went off. So for sure that was the problem. I'm not the guy who looking backwards and start crying. I mean, I look forwards, and we have a race this weekend, and I'm looking forward to have a great result.
Massa struggled with the ban on engine braking and traction control, and has had to cope with persistent rumours that Fernando Alonso will be a Ferrari driver next year.
We work as a team, as a family. I mean, with all respect, we know what we are inside, and our strength is really to keep, all together working in the best way to do. And of course, I understand the pressure from the media, but that's another story.
So this Alonso story is rubbish?
I mean, rubbish is not the right word because I know what it is, but for sure it's not the right thing to say.
That's not the ringing denial Massa might have wanted to hear. Felipe's also had to cope with an on-song teammate in Kimi Raikkonen. In Malaysia, Massa's strategy gave him pole, yet left him with less fuel than Raikkonen, allowing the Finn to jump him at the first stops.
It has worked quite many times for me, so okay, it's better than nothing, but like I said, I'd rather start from the pole and try to stay there.
I chose the strategy, and for sure I lost a bit of times in the first pit stop, but it was a good strategy.
If Felipe really thinks that was a good strategy, his problems run deeper than we thought. So what are his title chances now?
I don't think he's out of the championship yet. I think he still has a very good chance. Anything can happen, so no problems.
Kimi had quite a couple of bad races last year and still managed to come back and win the championship. So anything's possible. But obviously, for myself and for Kimi, we are bagging the points.
No, for sure he didn't have the most easy start of the season, but it's still early days and so many things can go wrong, right or wrong for either of us. So let's wait and see.
I lost for sure opportunity to score points in the first two races, but doesn't mean it's over. We have another 16 races to go, and we know things can change very quickly in Formula 1.
What sort of pressure is Felipe Massa under this weekend, and how well equipped is he to handle it all?
He's under a lot of pressure. I think, even myself, Steve, I said at the beginning of this season I put him down as a contender for the title, and as we are at the moment, that doesn't look to be happening at all. He comes from last year winning this Grand Prix, and he won it in great style. If he can replicate that, puts himself on the map, then we've got a chance of seeing him position himself. But at the moment, he's got no points on the board, and the pressure is mounting. And when he gets pressure, he does seem to crumble, and that's a big concern, and normally doesn't make a world champion.
And adding to the pressure, the rumours that Fernando Alonso is being lined up to come here to Ferrari. How much value do you give those rumours?
Personally, I give him no value. I think it's way too early to even have conversations about that. There is still a long way to go yet. Massa could turn around this weekend and put himself in contention. And I think, Alonso needs to be worrying about what's going on with Renault, not so much about his next year after this.
Yeah, I suppose it all depends for Fernando Alonso on how things work out down there at Renault. And Ted Kravitz is there at the moment with Renault's Pat Simmons.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. And, let's ask Pat himself. Firstly, do you think Fernando will stay? After all, he does have a 2-year contract with Renault. Do you think he'll see that out?
Well, look, it's really down to us. Fernando's brought a lot to the team in the past. He's bringing a lot to the team this year. But what we've got to do is we've got to give him a car to win in, and that's what we're striving to do. If we do that, I think he'll stay. If we don't, he's perfectly entitled to go.
Well, you've done it in the past twice, so I don't see why you shouldn't. Let's talk about this weekend. How important is it going to be on the rear tyres? That's what we've seen throughout practice, rear tyre wear being the defining factor almost.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not just wear, it's general degradation. This circuit is pretty tough. It is in the sort of top 3 of the ones where you have to look after the rear tyres. And we are running a little bit softer than we did last year on the tyres, but in fact they're holding up well. And even the soft tyre, we think is a very good race tyre here. It's going to be a good qualifying tyre. There's going to be no problems, over the short distance of qualifying. During the race, yes, you have to look after them.
Any chance of Fernando making it through to Q3?
Well, it's going to be tough. There was a second covering sort of 2nd to 17th at one stage this morning. So it is a hard task today, but that's what we're going for.
Thanks, Pat.
Well, we were talking earlier in the programme about the promising start to the season that BMW have made. The same could be said for Toyota, and the manner in which Jarno Trulli held off Lewis Hamilton to take 4th place in that Malaysian Grand Prix suggests possibly that at long last Toyota might be getting a bit of a payback for their huge investment in Formula 1. Now they're out here in Bahrain chasing still more horsepower.
It's a very rare privilege for outsiders to receive an invitation to visit these royal stables, home to the King of Bahrain's string of 75 thoroughbred racehorses.
The first time when I went on a horse, I just jumped up and fall down on the other side.
Horsemanship may not be Timo Glock's forte, but the Sakhir track just a mile from the racecourse is familiar ground. Toyota and Ferrari were the only 2 Formula 1 teams to make the trip out here for pre-season testing, and that winter work is now bearing fruit. Jarno Trulli finished 4th last time out in Malaysia in the much improved TF108, and the team's also been reinvigorated by the enthusiasm of his new teammate.
I think over the winter testing we found the right way to develop it, and that was important for the team. I think now the direction is pretty good. The team is working really strong back in Cologne. Everybody's out 24 hours and just try to get all the bits and pieces together and just develop the car.
We have understood and we have changed many things on our car, and the brand new car was completely different, so it's a car which we can work with and we can improve it.
Now that he's finally got a half-decent mount beneath him, Trulli's showing his true colours again.
Without a doubt, his best qualities are definitely qualifying. I mean, I think he's the best qualifier in the pit lane and still is to this day, you know. But if you look at his race pace in Malaysia, you know, when he's got a car that's doing what he wants to do, he's up there and he's a winner, and that's what we want, you know.
I believe that we can have a good season because I believe we have a good car. Obviously, finishing fourth was a bit unexpected, even if during the season we might have some good chance like in Malaysia, and we have to use it. So we got the car and we just have to push really hard in order to improve our performance, because I believe we're not so far away from BMW.
Glock's shown his potential with top 10 pace in qualifying at both races this year, although Sunday afternoons have been another story.
I have to say, until Saturday after qualifying I was every time happy, but the Sunday didn't work out quite well so far, but hopefully here in Bahrain it will be better. And I think that the performance wasn't too bad when you see the qualifying results compared to Jarno. I have to work on myself as well to just understand more the tyre situation. That's quite difficult this year.
Timo's close relationship with the highly experienced Trulli should help that progress on the technical front, and the relationship is another key element that's helping push Toyota up the grid.
The combination we have now is working, and I think that makes a huge difference because everybody is relaxed about it, and when they see both drivers working together, then all the engineers work together. It just flows through the team.
But was Malaysia a flash in the pan, or will the pre-season trip to the Desert Kingdom put Toyota at the sharp end of the grid again today?
Of course it helps, there's no question about that, and the test results, you know, hopefully they'll give us a little bit of an edge on the opposition, so we'll take whatever is going, you know.
Toyota have done a lot of testing here, so too have Ferrari. What advantage might it give them over the weekend?
Well, they should turn up here with already the ratios sorted out. They should have a basic setup. They've got lots of data from the aerodynamics that they would have picked up here. So they should be strong, and it looks like they're actually putting that to good practice. But, you know, I'm still surprised a little bit with Toyota. I really honestly feel that they should have made a lot more progress in the space of time they've been in F1. Maybe now, though, we will see the might of Toyota coming through, and they should be starting to win a Grand Prix or two.
Conditions here, both Toyota and Ferrari will be familiar with them from testing. Strong breeze across the circuit. How does that unsettle the cars?
It is a problem, Steve. You know, it sounds crazy in a way. These cars have got so much grip and downforce, but a gust of wind, which frequently can catch people out on any of these corners here, move you offline maybe 8 inches to a foot. You miss your apex. You could even miss the whole thing and be off the race circuit, as we've seen. So, yeah, it can catch you out.
Now, right at the bottom end of the pit lane are McLaren, and Louise is down there with Martin Whitmarsh.
Yeah, maybe Martin can tell us why, because the position in the pit lane is normally dictated by the team's finishing order in the previous year's championship. But Martin, at the first couple of races you've been in the 5th garage. This year you're down here at the end. What's the situation? Why the difference?
Well, as you said, it's more friendly down here. We go where we're put, and in reality what we're more interested in is where our cars are at the end of the race tomorrow, rather than where our garages are.
Well, let's talk about where your cars were at the end of the practice session this morning. Lewis Hamilton way down in 18th. Is that anything to do with the accident that he had yesterday?
No, I think it's more to do with we're preparing for Q3 in the belief, rightly or wrongly, that we're going to get through to Q3. So I suspect we were just a tad heavier than most of the other cars, but we'll see this afternoon. I think you know, it was a busy session. Lewis didn't get quite the run that he wanted, but I think we're not quite as slow as we might have indicated by our 3rd practice session time.
So we don't have to worry that shunt has set him back at all. Has it impacted on his performance at all, do you think?
No, I think Lewis is like lots of young drivers. They bounce back. I mean, for all of us, it would be an enormous shunt. I think they have enormous self-belief and self-confidence, and they climb out, bounce back. You know, he came back here, wanted to talk to his engineer about the setup for this morning, and we had to plead with him to go down to the medical centre. So that's really, you know, I think that says it all. He's, you know, he was thinking about this morning before he'd even been to the medical centre.
He's made a tough stuff. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, bye.
And that's all typical Lewis, by the sound of it.
It is indeed, and I think that's the makeup of a racing driver. You have these problems, and you also have the averages pan out that you're going to probably off the circuit 1 in 10 times you sit in a Grand Prix car. But, you know, when you do hit a wall, yeah, it does take it out of you, but if you can bounce back as Lewis has, not a problem. They will be strong in qualifying.
If that becomes McLaren's permanent pit lane position for the rest of the season, what sort of problems might it pose?
I think there may be a few other problems, being that, you know, they are far down there. They could actually get impeded when those cars come into the pit lane by other traffic. It loses them valuable seconds. I don't actually think it's going to be too much of a problem, Steve. You know, they're a professional outfit. All they are worried about, as Martin Whitmar said, is the performance on the track, and at this point they look strong. OK, as we await qualifying, a quick reminder of the ITV F1 website. That's where you can go for all the background, all the latest information on everything that's happening in and around the sport of Formula One, the fantasy F1 game as well, and also information on the ITV F1 competition.
This weekend we're offering you a 5-star experience, the chance to see one of the world's most exciting sporting events, the Monaco Grand Prix, and visit Barcelona, Saint-Tropez, Villefranche and Nice on board the luxury cruise ship Hebridean Spirit. You'll be flown on a private charter plane, experience the Monaco Grand Prix from a terrace overlooking the infamous Saint-Devote corner, and you'll enjoy unrivaled hospitality with an open bar, delicious food, VIP welcome pack and official Grand Prix programmes. And as if that wasn't enough, you'll also get 3 days exploring the French Riviera on board the luxury cruise ship Hebridean Spirit with guest speaker Murray Walker. To be in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize, courtesy of Hebridean International Cruises, just answer this question correctly. What is the official language of Monaco? Is it A, French, B, Italian, or C, English? Call 0901 293 2020. Calls cost £1 from BT landlines. Calls from mobiles and other networks may be higher. Or text the word F1 plus your answer A, B or C to 63337. Text costs £1 plus one standard network rate reply message. Digital, satellite and cable viewers can enter by pressing their red button now. You can also enter for free at itv.com. Entrants must be 18 or over and lines close at 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th of April. So best of luck. Entries made after the closing time won't be counted but may still be charged.
And we'll give you the result as part of our build-up to the next race, the Spanish Grand Prix, which is in Barcelona in 3 weeks' time. That's the race that launches the season in Europe, an 18-race season, this one rumoured to be the increase, though, to 20 races in the next year or so. But qualifying for round 3 is almost upon us. Rejoin us in Bahrain right after the break. Qualifying for round 3 of the Formula One World Championship, the Bahrain Grand Prix is coming up in just a few minutes' time here at the Sakhir circuit. And a lot of distinguished guests and familiar faces around the event this weekend. It was good to see Riccardo Patrese back at a Grand Prix. We heard from him as part of our build-up. And the former world champion Jacques Villeneuve is also paying his first visit back to a Formula One race since leaving BMW in 2006. He's here competing in the speed car support event, and shortly after finishing 7th, he talked with Louise.
It's the first time we've seen you back at a Formula One track since you disappeared from our scene. How have you enjoyed it? Has it been a bit of a strange experience?
Well, it's been quite an experience. I've had two babies, two little boys since then, so that's kept me busy. And since Christmas, I started working on my own. Changed all the. I've been working with Craig for 17 years, and so that's a big change. Trying to get the ball rolling again.
Are you missing Formula One?
I didn't last year, but I watched the first 2 races, and the cars look a lot of fun to drive without the driver's aids. You know, when I was racing, that's what kept me going, was hoping that one day I'd be driving the non-aids car, but didn't make it there.
Is there anything you've seen over the last couple of years that you thought looked particularly interesting? Any drivers that you thought looked particularly interesting on the F1 scene?
Well, Kimi surprised me in the second half of the season, definitely, and Felipe was quick, and also Fernando was, as usual, strong. You know, I've always been a big fan of Fernando.
Nice to see you here.
Thanks.
Jacques Villeneuve, who clearly enjoyed the competition in the speed car event this morning. That's the now familiar scene of the Sakhir circuit, hosting this Bahrain Grand Prix for the 5th time. It's warm, it's breezy. We've heard from Villeneuve, we've heard from Patrese. Alex Wurz is another driver who's quit racing in Formula One, but he's still around as a test driver at Honda, and he's with Ted.
Indeed, Stephen. Alex has been sitting in all the engineering meetings at Honda with Jensen and Rubens and Ross Brawn. What's the scene? How are you looking?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to see that the third free practice Saturday morning is actually very confusing. People do different things on the fuel strategies and tires. So we had still a bit more fuel in the car than most of the guys. Jensen has to sort out his balance. He was not very happy with the balance of the car Rubens was held up by traffic. So we ended up not too strong looking. But I think one of the two guys could sneak into top 10 if things run well. But hey man, it's so close out there, you could be out in the first qualifying heat as well.
And Ferrari, they were the ones along with Toyota who tested here in the winter. Do you think that's going to hand them an advantage here in qualifying?
I think they had an advantage to start the weekend, but it's the margin is getting smaller over the course of the weekend. Conditions now are much more rubber on the track. The grip level is higher than they had in testing. So I think all the data together then are worth not much anymore. In the end, I still think Ferrari has the fastest car here.
Okay, Alex, thanks very much. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah.
So Sakir awaits qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix. There will be a slight change to qualifying, a rule brought in after those scenes we saw at the climax of qualifying in Malaysia when obviously Lewis Hamilton and Heikki Kovalainen were penalised 5 places for impeding other drivers out on the track by going slowly at the end of the session. Rules have been introduced to outlaw that.
They definitely have, and it's a good ruling as well because it was very dangerous, that situation, Steve. Basically what happens now is for this circuit, for this weekend at this point, they will have to do no more than a 1 minute 39. So 1 minute 39 will be the maximum lap time is achievable. Quicker than that, obviously, the better. But at least by then they should be 6 or 7 seconds off the actual qualifying pace, and that's plenty quick enough to get around the track and not be a hindrance to any other cars.
So Kovalainen and his teammate Lewis Hamilton will be looking for a mistake-free session. Which way is pole position going to go, do you feel?
I have to say Ferrari at the moment. I think Ferrari, even with fuel corrected and everything put in place, they still look like they've got the upper hand. Massa indeed looks strong this weekend so far, as he should do. He's fantastic here last year. But you never know. You know, Lewis Kovalainen may pull something out the bag, or even a little Williams or BMW.
Yeah, we were hearing about the pressures on the shoulders of Felipe Massa a little bit earlier. The pole position man and the race winner here in Bahrain a year ago. Well, once again, it's warm, breezy conditions amid these desert sands, qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's the 3rd round of the Formula One World Championship, and it'll all be described by Martin Brundle and James Allen.